All right, hey everybody, it is Thursday night. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's me, Greg LaBeouf, here with Coach Brad and Coach Dustin. Welcome back, guys. And tonight's going to be really cool. Okay, we're going to do a conversation. We're going to have a conversation, a different conversation. I should say it's different because I have never come at this topic from the angle that we're going to approach it tonight. So it's going to be a very unique, very different conversation. And I genuinely hope that it resonates with not only you guys, but everybody else listening. So 60 seconds, we'll be back. Let's hit the intro. And tonight is going to be a great conversation. We're going to talk about the organized blitz.
Many people understand that they can at any time become the target of a violent criminal assault. These same people know that they have a life, family, and property worth defending. Criminals understand that violence is its own language. Violence is not the sport of competition. Violence is not the art of fighting. Violence is about one thing: destruction. There are those who believe that violence, even in self-defense, is morally wrong. Then there are good people like you who know that defending yourself, family, and others, as well as your property, is not only a personal right, but a duty within a civilized society. Understand, violent assaults are won before they occur. People who learn strategy survive. People who do not will not. For those brave people who believe life is precious and worth defending,
welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, guys, we are back. Okay, let's jump right into this tonight. I said it's going to be a conversation that we've had before, but I'm going to come at it from a very different angle, and it's going to be very new, and I can't wait to see or get your guys' reactions and to share these insights with everybody listening. So I said that we were going to talk about the organized blitz, and so I'm just going to establish a couple pieces of terminology. Now, a blitz is a piece of terminology that you guys are very familiar with, but I've never used the term organized blitz in front of that. And I'm going to throw up another set of terminology, and I'm going to call it either the static or the contained fight, I guess would be the best word. But it's more, I want you to focus more on the static or contained. I'll tell you what kicked me off onto this path. I was doing some reading. There's two things. One, I was doing some reading. The stuff that I was reading on was some research on the psychology behind aggression. And in this, they had a portion of this where they were talking about serial killers and just murderers in general, but they went a little bit deep on serial killers and the profile of serial killers. And they covered a concept of the organized killer. And this really kind of struck, and I was pulling something out of that where I came up with the idea of an organized blitz. And I'll elaborate more on this in a second. And then simultaneously, I think it was the same day, maybe it was the next morning, I got hit with 10 or 15 different sponsored ads from different self-defense organizations globally that just popped up on in a social media feed. And I like that because I like to research. I like to see what other people are doing, concepts they're sharing, stuff like that. And in this one, it was very interesting because it had to be, like I said, 15 of these things in a row. And every single one of them was a technique. Every single one was, here's how you counter a single-handed grab while you're pressed up against the wall. Here's how someone grabs you. Here's how you avoid or block, a sucker punch. Here's how, whatever it was. They just went on and on and on, and it covered the gamut from stand up to ground to all this type of stuff. And because I had just had this sharp contrast of reading about, the psychology of aggression, the psychology of violence, the psychology behind serial killers and all that stuff. And of course, studying criminal violence for 27 years, I've studied a lot of this stuff. And of course, we study literally thousands and thousands of hours of CCTV footage of, homicides, murders, assaults, rapes, because you have to understand what the bad guys are doing. What's the blueprint that they're using? So let me try to drill this down. You guys understand that when it comes to weaponized against violence, we are constantly preparing for a blitz attack. And for a lot of people, they may not be familiar with that term. And I want you to really understand this because violence is not aggression. And we have to separate those two words, right? Aggression is more closely connected to antisocial aggression. Meaning what? Meaning that's at the core of that, there's choice. There's choice in the sense that you can either remove, de-escalate, or deter. And we've talked about this at length before, but antisocial aggression, right, is often that is where the ego or sense of moral superiority is hit. So I just want to give a quick example. I use often in my workshops, use an example of being at the park, being at the shopping center at Christmas time. You're driving around in your car, you got the family in there, everybody's impatient, the fucking parking lot's packed, and you're waiting half an hour to find a stall. Finally, somebody's backing out, you're sitting there, blinker on, and just as that person backs out, some guy comes out of nowhere and steals your spot. Now, in that moment, you can have a reaction to that. You're going to have an emotional response or emotional reaction. And in that moment, you might get out of the car, say, well, that's bullshit. I was sitting there waiting. I'm not angry. Like, I'm not angry in the sense like I'm not getting out to kill this person, but I'm going to get out because this is not right. So I'm going to confront this person. I'm going to ask this person to get the fuck out of my stall or, politely, whatever you want. In that moment, you have to understand that you made a choice. Because you, in that moment, had a chance to remove yourself from the situation. You could have just drove away. You didn't have to say anything. Now, people often push back and go, yeah, but you can't let people fucking walk all over you. That's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, so they get confused right away. They're like, oh, well, you're spineless then. You got to be able to stand up for yourself. Okay. But understand that you still made a choice. You made a choice to step out. Now, even if you're going to be as polite as possible, say, hey, excuse me, sir, maybe you didn't see me, but I've been waiting for half an hour. I had my signal light on. You came out of nowhere. That's clear to, whatever it is. You have to understand that that's an antisocial aggression moment, right? So understanding that part of it, this is, again, the concept of, where I'm going to build to this static or this contained type situation. So you have these moments of choice. There are other situations, 3 o'clock in the morning, armed intruder breaks in, coming up the stairs, sees you, and rushes towards you. And in that moment, you got young kids down the hall, a spouse sound asleep behind you. You cannot remove, you cannot de-escalate, and you cannot deter. So your only choice, well, you have two choices, submit and hope that they show you mercy, or you have to defend. But either way, you're devoid of choice, right? So in the context of this, there is a predator blitz, meaning that the bad guys, the violent criminals, leave you no choice. And what I want you to understand is this concept that I pulled that is, can be connected to, serial killers and people that murder, is they have something called like the organized killer. And really we could equate this to even first degree murder. Like we have different classifications within the Canadian legal system. And just to keep it really simple, one of the classifications is premeditated murder. So premeditated murder obviously means what? Well, you planned it. You were thinking about it. Okay? Organized killer, an organized killer often implements an organized blitz attack. So what does that mean? So it means that they thought about it. They thought about, listen, I want to kill. Now maybe there's a specific person that is the focus of my rage, but I'm like, I want to get that person. Or maybe it's just a type. Whatever it is, whatever the pathology is, the psychology of it, they are organized. So what does that actually mean? Okay, so just leave that for a second. Then we go back over to this static or this contained type thing. And I'm going to reference all of the videos that I saw. Here's what you do when somebody's got, a one-handed choke and they're, whether you're on the ground or up against the wall, they're trying to choke you. Or a two-handed choke, or they grab you, or they get you from behind, or they have a big wide swing, a punch, whatever it is. And when I saw the contrast in these two things again, and of course we know this, but we've never talked about it this way, to me, it was super apparent in this moment that even though you could have somebody like one of the things was MMA guys, and they were drilling something. So they were showing, say, listen, okay, they're ready now. When this guy throws a kick, they were shown how to cut kick the leg. He throws the kick and you time it. And when the kick comes, you kick underneath and you kick his supporting leg. And when you cut kick and hit the support leg, then they followed up with a cross, and then they did a body tackle into the takedown. If the cut kick didn't knock him to the ground, they had a sequence to follow up. So they were showing how you drill this. And in my head, it was like, okay, what's interesting is they believe that this is alive, right? Because they're actually saying, okay, I'll show you the technique, and now we're going to spar the technique. So now they're moving around. They're doing it light, but they're moving around. And the one guy's throwing some punches, and then every now and then he goes to throw the kick, and the other guy has to time it, put the cut kick, go for the combination, and see if he can execute the technique. So they're going, oh, it's alive. And in my brain, the thing that I thought, oh, we got to talk about this, is no matter how alive that moment is, you could be doing it sparring, you could be doing it full out. If the camera is focused in on that, that's all you see, it looks very alive. Compared to statically someone standing there, okay, I grab this, I reach here, I do wrist lock here, I do this, like just drilling something. And so they go, well, that's super alive. But when the camera pans back and you get a bigger picture of violence, you can't help but go, holy fuck. People have to recognize that this is a very contained thing that is being practiced or trained. Because when you pan back, you see the organized killer. You see the organized blitz. And so now I want to share a concept. I want to share how this works. Imagine for a second a violent criminal that operates with some similarity to an organized serial killer. And now people might go, aren't you making a giant leap from a psychopath serial killer to like a predator criminal? And here's where I think the conversation is going to be very interested. They're closer than what a lot of people think in one sense. Premeditation. Being organized. Right? A serial killer like Ted Bundy. What did Ted Bundy do? Right? Ted Bundy had an entire ruse. He had a ploy. He was a well-educated, very smart, articulate, a handsome, all this stuff, right? Charismatic individual. And yet what he still did was he had a ploy. He had a ruse. Often he'd put his arm in a fake cast and be pretending to try to load a kayak or a canoe, whatever it was. And when pretty young girls would come by and offer to help him, he would ambush them at that point. But he had the ruse to say, it's okay, you can trust me. I'm showing you vulnerability to draw you in. And it's like, people, why? Why time after time do you see a certain type of serial killer, even Ed Kemper, who's like 6'8", and like was 300 and something. Like this guy was a massive man. Massive man. And yet what he did is he actually started to study. He spent, they believe, up to close to a year studying women. And what he would do is he would drive around and he would pick up pretty young female hitchhikers. And he didn't pick them up to murder them. He picked them up to study how they reacted to him. And for a year, he studied their reactions. And some of them, when he'd slow down, said, oh, I'll give you a ride. They wouldn't get in the car with him. Why? Because the guy's like 6'8" and 300-something pounds, and like he's like a massive man, and they were terrified. So he figured out how he could use persuasion. He figured out a ploy. He figured out a ruse. He figured out his script. How he would have to change his expressions or his behaviors or things that he would say or have to show them that disarmed them and got them to get into the vehicle with him. Why would a guy that's 6'8", 300-something pounds, he could have just waited, found a girl, like a victim, found him alone in an isolated place, reached out, grabbed them, throttled, like probably wrung their neck like a fucking chicken. He could have done all that, but instead, he spent a year studying them to lure them. Why? Does this make sense where I'm going with this? Because he was an organized killer. He wanted to control every detail. He wanted, even with his massive size, he wanted to gain as much compliance. He wanted to avoid any type of resistance, detection, whatever it is, right? There's a whole list of things that they would want to avoid.
I think one like I think one word that people would like to interject into this conversation that has no business being in this conversation is random,
Mhm.
right? It's just how like people like attach onto that word like it's a lifeline where it gives a little bit of security. But I know that's not kind of where we're going and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But it's like it seems like I guess I said, I'm like it has no business being in this conversation because this type of these acts they're not random. And we've talked about that before.
100%. And well, let's look at the word random. Even if the victim selection, the target selection is completely random, let's say it's completely random, they're premeditated. They're organized in their blitz. Like, do you understand? Like, let's just say, let's give people what they want. It's random. Oh, okay, it's totally random. But do you understand that the enemy that you may have to randomly defend against is fucking organized?
Yeah.
He is coming at you with an organized blitz. Is this not like, is there a difference? Like, let's say we have a neighborhood hotline. My little neighborhood, everybody has a party line, like it's wired in, goes to every house. And one night, the neighborhood hotline rings, and so we all pick up, right? There's 20 of us, 30 of us in our little call, pick up answer. And it's a warning. There is a group, a small group, 10 people, coming towards your neighborhood, and it's a mob mentality. They're just out there randomly destroying, vandalizing, robbing, raping, whatever it is. Okay, so it's this mob that's floating our way. Or the phone rings and say, there is a known predator, premeditated, assassinating people, like killing, murdering people. And he's heading towards your neighborhood. Is there a difference in that? Violence is coming, but is there a difference in that? Like, if people don't understand, like, you have this wild mob, dangerous, right? Wild, but they're unorganized. They're unorganized, meaning that if I'm even just moderately organized, it is much easier for me to disrupt them, to isolate or separate them, to individually attack, take down. Like, you know what I mean? It's just so much easier to counter that than it is if you have one person who you go, holy fuck, this guy's premeditated. And let me break it down another way. You have a group of amateurs coming, or you've got an elite team of 6 highly trained special forces that are going to take down your neighborhood. Oh, I got a mob of angry teens. They're coming towards the neighborhood, or you got 4 members of SEAL Team 6 that their whole mission is to wipe out 20 houses in our neighborhood. Like, you think they're going to have a problem? Not really, probably not. Why? Because they're fucking organized, man. Because they're organized. And so this thing about an organized blitz, and coming back to the whole serial killer thing and stuff, right? I'll just share a story with you, right? My instructors, I remember them telling me a story one time. They're out playing basketball. This is in a really, really bad part of Long Beach in California. My one instructor, he grew up there, so he felt comfortable there. Didn't live there anymore, but they're back there and they're playing basketball. And they're a couple of white guys in a non-white neighborhood, and they're playing basketball, and these ultimately altercations break out. And, my instructors probably shouldn't have been there, but they're, they are who they are. And the first few altercations that break out, they do very well. But they don't leave. They don't leave because they're fine, right? They're the biggest kids in the playground, so to speak. And so it ends up being a couple. These people leave, and then they come back. And they have somebody else, and now there's another altercation, and then then they leave again, because once again, they've been defeated, and they come back. So 3 times this happens. And now each time you got to have, your head on a swivel. You got to think, maybe we should go home, but they didn't. So that's a whole other story, but they didn't. So choice. Now what happened? Yeah. So now here's why this story is so interesting. The first 3, what we'll call fights, were complete antisocial aggression. Complete antisocial aggression. They could have left. They could have removed themselves and left, but they didn't. So these guys lose 3 times. So they don't want to lose anymore. So now they leave, but this time they come back. And they come back with 2 cars packed with people. And so now my instructors are like, oh, fuck. Like, we fucked up. We're in trouble. But the 2 cars don't get out. They don't blitz them. They don't turn it into just this free-for-all. What they do is they start yelling insults and taunts, and they start berating and dehumanizing, and they do all this stuff. But they stay in the cars. And so my instructors are like, it's a sign of weakness, like they're actually afraid of us. So what do? They don't leave. They start chasing them. They say, oh yeah, you guys want that? Well then come on, let's go. We'll take you all on. 2 against, 15. So they run, and these guys get in the car and they drive up. They drive, and they're like, yeah, that's what we thought, you cowards. And they stop, and they get out, and they start taunting them again. And so then they're like, oh yeah, and they run and they chase them again, and these guys drive away again. 3, 4 times. They run after them, these guys drive away. Get out, taunt, run after them, drive away. And then sobriety hits. And then my instructors are sitting there going like, now they're like breathing heavy. They're tired from playing basketball, 3 other altercations or fights. Plus now they've been chasing these guys. And then they look up and they realize, oh, fuck. We were on the edge of gang territory. Now we're 4 blocks into gang territory. And now these 2 cars become 4 cars. 15 become 30. And luckily, as they clued in 20 seconds before the ambush was fully set. And that 20 seconds of running for their lives, and being chased and getting back to kind of that line and getting into a different neighborhood stopped it. And why I share that specific story is because they learned some very, very valuable lessons. And we all learn from these lessons, but it ties into what I was talking about right here. What was taking place? What's the difference between a contained fight and an organized blitz? What happened? First, there's a fight. Okay, it's just a fight. We win, you lose. Then there's another fight. Now we win, you lose. There's another fight. 3 fights. We win, you lose. Each time could have easily just removed yourself. Didn't want to do that. Ego, sense of morale. Well, that's bullshit. But then all of a sudden, something changes. The fourth incident was an organized blitz. Who did they go get? Not just more people. Who did they go get? Like, this is speculative, but who did they go get, do you guys think?
Probably killers. Probably guys with guns, you know what I mean? Guys with history of violence, the people who they felt were going to be the most effective against these guys they couldn't beat.
Yeah.
And that weren't going to lose.
Yep. Let's put it like stick on the word that you said. Like they went and got killers. They weren't coming back to fight.
No.
Now you think about this. Why didn't they just roll up in those 2 cars as they're driving by, just start spraying fucking bullets? They could that also could have been done, but they didn't. Because they weren't. Go ahead, Brad.
They had. It wasn't guaranteed, right? So it's like it's no different than when you talked about organization before. It's like, how can I make every possible scenario work in my favor?
Yeah,
there's better. I know there's stronger words that I could have used, but it was like, how do I stack the deck?
Yeah, how do you control every variable? Because they weren't in their neighborhood, so they didn't have the environment under control. They're probably standing in a basketball court. These guys are parked on the road in cars. So yeah, you can start shooting, but they can just run across the court. Do you know what I mean? Or they jump in a fence, getting behind a parking lot of vehicles. Like, there's so much in that environment they couldn't control. Not to mention who else.
Yes.
Are there police more probable in that environment versus in their neighborhood? All that stuff, right? So they want to control every little variable, and the environment is a massive variable.
Yes. Think about it this way. Had they driven back in the cars, came back, 2 cars, 15 people, and just started firing weapons, they would not have been organized. They would have been in a rage, a blitz, an emotional reaction, an emotional rage, and they would have been expressing that rage, which is unorganized, uncontrolled. Yeah. And what I'm trying to get people to understand, and we've talked about this all the time, and this is what I'm saying, we're trying to come at this from a different angle, is violent criminals have a fucking blueprint. We say this all the time. They have a blueprint. They literally have a blueprint for how they successfully assault, murder, and rape innocent people. This is why you can see on the news, oh, there's a string of home invasions. They have an MO. They have a modus operandi. They have a blueprint. Here's what they're doing. There's serial killers and home invaders, right? And you can Google this shit. One guy, they go up to a house and they have an animal, a dead animal in their hands, and knock on the door and say, oh, it ran out in front of my car. And people are like, oh my God, is it your cat? Is this your dog? And they say, oh no, it's not mine. Do you know if it's one of your neighbors? No, I don't. Do you have a garbage bag? Like they get in there and the people run, they go to their kitchen, they invite them in because there's sympathy, there's compassion. This is one of the strategies, right? Like in no time at all, I just Googled in real quick before we went, and I found 5 different videos and each of them had like a top 10, top 15 different ploys that murderers, killers use, different scams that they run, right? People pretending to be law enforcement, or tend to be paramedics, showing up, approaching someone and saying, there's a 911 call. Do whatever? There's somebody reported to have a heart attack. Do you know what this address is? Can you show me? Are you familiar with the area? Where could this be? Oh, it's over here. Come with me. And they lead the way, get in front of them. And when they get around into the back alley, boom, they ambush them. And they mug them and steal money or do whatever. There is so many different ploys, and it all connects to what? Premeditation, organized blitz. And they're organized. They use a ploy. They use a ruse to get you in a position where you are far more vulnerable, distracted, whatever it is. And then the level of violence that they hit those people with is insane. Why? Because they want to execute a quick kill. They're not looking for a fight, or they want to subdue. And then they want to have the time to subdue and move to a different location to then do whatever else they want. Now, we're not talking serial killers tonight, but we are talking about violent criminal predators. And so let's back it up. And here's the thing. People might go, this is extreme, like a serial killer, the methodology that used by an organized serial killer versus just a street criminal, like a predator, a criminal. Like I gave you an example what out of my shotgun. I can think of a situation in Edmonton where inside of a restaurant, an argument broke out between, one guy was there with his wife and there was 2 other guys, and they got into an argument. They didn't know each other. They got into an argument. And the 2 guys at the bar started, calling the guy's girlfriend's names, this, and it kind of cooled down. And they noticed that the couple, the man and the wife, were getting ready to leave. So these guys went outside, and when the couple came out and they're about to get in their car, one guy approached them. And one guy from 20, 30 feet away started yelling at the guy again. The guy looked at him, started engaging with that guy, while his friend had gone to the vehicle, parked at a different angle, gotten a gun from the vehicle, and while the guy was arguing, yelling at this guy, the other guy shot and killed him. Distracted him. Is that a ploy? Was that a ruse? Was that organized? Could it have been more organized? I guess so. But the point is, it wasn't this emotional unorganized blitz. It was a more organized blitz. And I think I can think of a home invasion that happened in the Edmonton area where, they'd get a woman to knock on the door when the people, my car broke down, and can I use the phone? Once the person at the door was either distracted or had the door wide open, the male suspect, 1 or 2 of them, would rush in, grab the guy, and they didn't have a knife, they didn't have a gun. They had a hypodermic needle filled with blood that they said was tainted blood. And this is back when HIV and AIDS was, terrifying to everybody, and they said it was infected blood, and they had injected into them, and people were like, they didn't know what to do with that. There's times to use pepper spray. The thing that I want people to see is the organized blitz. We've got to start understanding that they have methodology and a blueprint.
I have an example. That first-hand example happened to me many, many years ago when I was in college and visiting Edmonton, actually, when I lived in Calgary. We were drinking, we were having a party, and we all head down White Ave. and I was walking with my buddy and his girlfriend, and all of a sudden, one dude on the park bench just started talking shit. Fuck you, blah blah blah. Like just talking shit about my friend's girlfriend and all this stuff. And one of us, might have been me, not gonna say that it was.
Not going to name allegedly.
And allegedly, someone said a little comment back to him. And the minute that guy stood up, right? There was I forget which street it was, but there's a little cutout, and there's like convenience stores all in this little cutout parking lot behind this park bench and this bus bench and stuff like that. And I swear about 15, 20 guys that were all standing around in the parking lot on their cars, all talking, blah, blah, blah. You didn't notice them in the background. The minute that the indicator for them, thinking back, was the minute that he stood up. Because the minute that he stood up, every single one of them started approaching us. I'm like, let's get the fuck out of here. We're fine. We're like, let's get out of here because we know what this is, right? And well, I knew what it was, but it's like let's get out of here. But again, it goes back exactly to what you're talking about. It's like it was organized.
Yeah.
They had a fucking plan. They had a game plan and a blueprint on how they were going to get somebody. That somebody could have been me.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, like kind of with what Brad's talking about, but throwing back to you guys earlier talking about random, and like, is it really random? And like, yeah, okay, maybe Brad and his buddy and the girlfriend was random. Like, it could have been the next couple coming down the street had Brad not allegedly said something back to him. It could have been the next person. So is that random? Well, sure, it was random because it could have been Brad, it could have been someone else. But I think how you determine random is like, well, how wide of a lens are you using?
Yeah.
If all you look at is like, is it going to be Brad or is it going to be the next guy or the next guy? Yep, seems random. But widen the lens a little bit. And then you start to see where it's like, oh, it's not random. Not what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? The guys on the car waiting, all that premeditated, organized stuff, none of that's random. So it's just like the further you back out, the more you see the plan in place and how long that's been planned for. Yes. Whereas, yes, there's maybe an element that looks random, but it's not once you back out.
Yeah. And that plan was in place before they left their fucking house.
Yeah,
sure. They didn't just do it. Yeah.
One of our clients a number of years back who we trained was driving in his car, and he's driving his car and it's summer and the window's down. He's listening to music. He drives his car, and he comes up. He's approaching a red light, and he's coming up to a red light. And as he's slowing down, he looks over and he sees a group of I think it was 6 or 7 people standing on the corner. And as he slows down, he comes to a stop and. Right away, he has this, bad feeling, whatever. I'm in my car, I'm not, whatever. I'm not going to pay attention to it, And all of a sudden, they have a couple guys walk out in front of his car like they're going to cross the street. And so he's like, oh, they're going across the street. So he's distracted kind of watching these guys, and these guys kind of stop in front of his car. And then all of a sudden, he says out of the corner of his eye, he can tell like something's there. And the other guy is standing in the window stabbing him. And he got stabbed, I think it was 6 or 7 times. And he puts his arm up, so he's getting stabbed a lot in the shoulder. And luckily, they didn't get him in the neck and the artery and stuff like that. But he's standing there. But then he said again, not only is he being stabbed, it's a red light. There's people standing in front of his car. There's traffic coming through. But he's caught in this moment of like, what the fuck? And then finally, like it clicks where it's like, hit the gas or die. So he nails the gas. And of course, those guys jump out of the way. He goes flying through. Luckily, traffic doesn't hit him. He drives off and he's been stabbed 6 or 7 times. And luckily, he lives. And they found out later through the police, I can't remember if they ever caught the guys or not, but that was an example, that was a blueprint of how gang members were being jumped into gangs. They had to attack, they had to murder somebody, or at least attempt to murder somebody, I guess. And so that was how they were doing it. But again, it's like the premeditation, the organized blitz. And if nothing comes from this, I'll just say this right now. If nothing else comes from this conversation, I think a lot of people might sit there now and go, holy fuck. Like, if you don't know how they're organized, what their blueprints are, like what they're doing, then when all of a sudden this group and 2 guys walk in front of your car and suddenly stop in the middle, like, if it's a red light, but they stop, and it's like, when do you pick up the indicators? Because people think, oh, I wouldn't have hesitated, I would have ran those fuckers over. Of course, everybody's got a plan till they get hit in the fucking mouth. Then your plan goes to shit. You know, and we've seen this because for 17 years, we run scenarios. We have a laboratory. We do road raids, for example. We do car assaults where you put people in real cars, not in a dojo where you fucking put tape on the ground and 2 folding chairs and goes, this is your vehicle. Here's your cardboard steering wheel. No, you have real fucking cars and people have to walk out. They come from out of the house and they come to a car and then somebody's actually fucking attacking them in a way that they don't know. And what I'm getting at is I've seen people, they can't get the key in the ignition. I've seen people get the key in and the car is running and they're still trying to start the car because the auditory exclusion, they can't hear the starter grinding. I've seen guys like they can't get the car in fucking reverse. They literally forget how to fucking drive.
Or they can't get it into park and they run into the neighbor's fence.
They run into the neighbor's fence.
Allegedly
Ran into the neighbor's fence. Yes. But it's again like the chaos of the whole thing. But once you've run the blueprint, I remember doing a course one time as a scenario course, and it was on home invasions, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was a girl that trained with us, and I remember, you know, she knew that we were putting in a scenario, and yet I still was able to convince her to open the door for me. And because the story was, you know, it got, and here's the funny thing, I'll stop here because people are like, oh, come on. Ed Kemper, the guy I talked about, the massive guy, he was attacking a woman and she managed to lock him out of the car, which slowed his attack. He didn't at his size, he didn't smash through the window and grab her. He stopped and he talked her into unlocking the door, which she did, and then he murdered her. You understand? Like, people do not understand the power of an organized blitz, a premeditated, violent fucking criminal. Yeah, there's a sliding scale. You can have serial killers at the top, but people think violent, predatory criminals are dumb. Like, you think that they've never learned any lessons. They're not invested. Like, You talk to people that are in law enforcement or members of the corrections who work around violent criminals every day, which we have a number of members that do both, and you hear the education that these individuals receive in the prison system. They are not dumb people. They are organized. How did one of them put it to me? They have nothing to do all day but figure out their scams, figure out and refine their blueprints, polish, share notes, practice, strategize, think about it. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. This is what they're doing. So yes, are there violent criminals that just have these unorganized emotional blitzes? Yes. Yes, of course. Dangerous? Oh, fuck, of course it is. But are there organized blitz? Is there people that have blueprints, are thinking about it, refining it? Ed Kemper, studying human nature for a year to figure out how to best create vulnerability in moments of opportunity so that he can murder. Of course. You're naive to think anything else. And if your training does not account for that, and that's where I come back to, like, what are we doing today in class? I'm going to show everybody the counter to the one-handed choke. I'm going to show everybody a counter of how to slip out of a triangle choke. I'm going to show everybody how to prevent the haymaker. Okay, stop. In that moment, the camera zoomed in on that moment, you have a live combative moment. Can be very dangerous. Do you need to learn how to deal with this? Of course. But stop for a second. You know why I call that, and the best word is contained. Sometimes people are doing it statically, which is even worse. But you know why I call it contained? Because back out 1 degree and you have to ask, how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point? Because if the answer to that is it was an organized blitz, oh, you don't understand how behind the 8 ball you already are. Because that hand around your throat, that choke, that screwdriver in the base of your skull, that's not a guy standing there with a screwdriver going, I'm going to stab you. That's somebody who has used an organized ploy, a trained, rehearsed ploy to get you into a position of vulnerability so they had access to the base of your skull. And if you can't recognize, and people say, well, how do you defend against that? By training it and recognizing what we call the PINs, the pre-incident indicators, by studying the bad guy's blueprints. This is what is so annoying to me. People think you can't study or predict violent behavior. In our very opening, I guess it's my intro for my bad guy blueprint. The whole intro, I talk about it. People have to stop saying shit's random. They have to stop. We have to get past the belief. People believe that you cannot predict human behavior. You cannot predict violent behavior. It is unpredictable. It is bullshit. You can predict violent behavior easier than you can predict driving behavior. And we do it every single fucking day. I would wager hundreds of thousands of people, easily, worldwide, hundreds of thousands of people, their lives are saved every single day because other drivers accurately, quickly, in the moment, predict driving behavior and adjust. They slow down a fraction of a second before that kid runs out between the two cars because you saw something that told you that little fucker's coming out. That ball's coming on the road and that guy's going to chase it. I just fucking knew it. You sit at a light half a second longer, you go and your foot comes off and covers the brake because you go on, that motherfucker's not turning even though his signal light's on, and he goes ripping straight through and you go, holy fuck. We do this every single day. Like, how many people are saved? Imagine if we literally could not predict driving behavior. We just assumed everybody was going to do everything that they were supposed to do when they were supposed to do it in the manner in which it needs to be done. Fuck. How many more accidents we have? How many more fatalities would we have every single day? But no. You cannot predict violent behavior. It's random. We don't want to acknowledge that it exists in us. This is what it really comes down to, isn't it? If you can predict what a violent, this is a new segment that I'm going to come up with for my podcast. And the segment is literally going to be called Criminal Minds. Think Evil. And what I'm going to do in this segment, and a lot of people won't understand this, and a lot of people probably won't like this, but what I'm literally going to do is I'm going to take court cases from anywhere in the world, I don't give a shit, Canada, the US, I don't care, but actual transcripts of court cases, where I can break down for people how an assault, a homicide, a murder, whatever it was committed, give people the details of how the perpetrator murdered or attempted to murder. And then what we're going to do is figure out how he could have done it better, how he could have been more effective. And people are like, are you insane? What is the value of allowing, or first, this is the real question. What is the value of acknowledging that you can actually think of the ways that somebody could effectively kill you or your family? What's the value in that? Because that just seems horrifically gross and sadistic, but what's the value of it?
How do you solve something if you don't understand the problem?
What do FBI profilers do? I mean, nobody has to be in that occupation. I don't think most people know a profiler. I don't know a federal profiler. I don't know a profiler like that. But what do we know about them? What do they do?
Study psychopaths, serial killers.
They study behavior. And guess what they do, people? They think like they think. They learn to think like they think. They learn to figure out what's motivating them, what's driving them, what are the fantasies, what are the obsessions, what are they after? They literally think. I've said this many times before. Remember I said we've had all these conversations before, but I'm trying to come at this in a very different way to wake people up. But you have to think like they think. The greatest weapon, the most dangerous weapon, is the human mind. That's the concealed weapon, and its capacity to think evil. And this is going to be a segue. We're going to do a whole separate podcast on just these two things, and it will be called Think Evil versus Doom on You. Bad guys, violent, predatory criminals, those that have it within them to destroy, debase, dehumanize, maim, kill, murder, they think evil. Good people that want to be able to protect themselves, their family, innocent people, as well as their property, whatever it is, from violent criminal predator assault, have to have a doom on you mentality. meaning they think evil. It's hatred, it's destruction, it's obsession, it's power, it's whatever it is that motivates evil people. They think evil, and the brain lacks no originality. The brain is a very creative tool. The human capacity to use imagination and to be ruthless is unlimited, and it exists in all of us. Most good people do not tap into that. They don't think that way. Right? But the capacity is in the mind. They think evil, and we have to look, like profilers, we have to look at how these predators are living in our ecosystem, in our cities, in our countries, in our towns, whatever it is. How are they doing this? What have they thought of? How evil, how resourceful, like what lengths would they go to? But when they're thinking evil, our counter to that is, well, doom on you, motherfuckers. Like I'm a good person. I have morals. You know what I mean? I love my family. I love people. I love my neighbors. I love my life. So doom on you. You're going to think evil. I'm born with the same brain. I can study. I'm not afraid to turn on the light and look into the sledge and darkness that exists in our world. It's horrific. But at the same time, like I'm not hunting down serial killers, but at the same time, I'm looking and recognizing, I study court cases in Edmonton. I look up and I'll go in, and maybe once a month, sometimes not once, maybe 3-4 months, and I will go through the court records and I will find the transcripts and read the transcripts of the court cases where people have been the victims of violent crime. And I study how these people victimized. Did they know their victim? What was the purpose? What was the motivation? How did they execute that? How did they injure? How did they maim? How did they torture? What did they do? And I'll tell you, if people actually understood some of the cases that are happening, cases of violence that happen in our city, they would never believe that it's true. If they understood some of the violence that goes on inside of the prisons, inside of Edmonton, and just in our city, never mind our province or in our country, and understand the types of people that are in there and what they do and how, what happens in there, and then them being released into the public, they would think it's a fucking movie. And is it worse in other parts of the world? Maybe, sure. But evil is everywhere. Like, there's no geographical limitations to evil because the human mind, they think evil. And again, we've spent a lot of time on the organized Blitz, but I don't know how you hear this type of conversation and look at martial arts training and not see how contained, sterile, myopic, one-dimensional it is. Because the whole fucking world is programmed to think everything is a fight. That's what it is. It's a fight. That's the ceiling. It's a fight. And majority of time, the threat that people will face, it's antisocial aggression. Somebody is rude, inappropriate, aggressive, or violent in a way that they want to fight you. And oftentimes, good people do stupid things. They're drinking too much. Their ego, their sense of moral superiority, whatever it is, kicks in, and they engage in a fight. And yes, people are killed. Fights escalate. Good people die inside of fights. Learning to defend yourself from a fight or in a fight when somebody tries to fight you and defend, all great stuff. Yes, you should know it. But understand that you haven't built the foundation yet. Because you don't rise to a level of expectation, you fall to a level of training. You don't prepare for a mild crisis and thrive in a catastrophic crisis. I take first aid, right? You guys take first aid, right? Everyone gets brushed up on first aid. Fantastic. Let's head to the Ukraine right now and become combat medics on a battlefield. Pretty sure I'm fucked. I don't know how to treat a mortar wound. You know what I mean? Like from a mortar round. You know what I mean? When people are splayed open, like combat medics understand it because they have a different level. Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, what level of training do you have? CPR is everybody should have CPR. Everybody should know how to defend themselves from altercations and from some dude trying to fight you. And if you can contain him, control him, subdue him, awesome. That's part of it. But at the same time, I would be asking my instructors, hey, what do we do if there's an organized blitz? What? Oh, like, never mind. like, clearly, well, the first thing is get your hands up. Move around, you know what I mean? Keep bobbing. We've got to get your lead foot outside of his foot so he can't put the cross in and stay out. You know what I mean? It's like, holy Christ.
Yeah.
Like, what about his ploy? What about the ruse? What are the what are the 5 top ploys or ruses that are happening in Edmonton that violent criminals are using? Get your hands up, keep your chin tucked. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, let's pull guard and I'll show you how to get out of the triangle choke. Like, and I'm not making fun of those techniques. They're great techniques. You need to learn that stuff. I'm just contrast. It's so funny. I had a private today, an online private with one of our members in Regina, and we were talking, and he was asking a question about this kind of contained aspect within a more of a fight. But we're talking about, and I said, listen, a matter of fact, I'll just share the story because it's important. But his brother was in Las Vegas just a little while ago. His brother's in Las Vegas, and he was at the New York. And he was going across, Dustin, you're familiar with it, the pedway that takes you across to the MGM Grand. He walked out of there, and as he walked out, a guy, tall, lean guy, rushes right up to him, screaming like, "You motherfucker!" That's like eyes like saucers, and he says right in his face, and like, fuck yeah. And he said he just was like, and his brother's like a big guy too, and just was like quickly beelined. He had his girl with him around and kept walking. Was kind of watching the guy, but like. Kind of was like, just don't say, he knew, don't say shit, just keep an eye and get the fuck out of there. He did. I don't know, it was an hour later, came back, and there was a dead body lying there. The guy had a 18-inch butcher knife and had just started fucking butchered the guy. Just some other tourist, innocent guy, just butchered him to death. And he was just like, rattled, right? Like, holy fuck. This is not even on the strip. This is in, connected between 2 major hotels in Las Vegas. How close did he come? I mean, like they say, what do they say? In your lifetime, you'll pass 25 to 35 serial killers or murderers in your life. You know what I mean? And that's just passing people in your travels. Never, crazy's out there, man. And it's a whole different thing. Now, that guy wasn't an organized blitz. That guy was an unorganized blitzer. But it happened so much faster than the fight. And again, it's like, sorry, I sidetracked myself, but the conversation with him today is he gave me a scenario and he was talking about doing a specific technique. And he said, yeah, but like if this guy squared up, like we used to do like a jeet tech back in the day, and you do this jeet tech and like you can stop hit the guy with your foot. And, is that still good? Do we still do that? And it's like, no, man, like we can use that to teach timing to something, but like that's not... We don't do that anymore. Not really. And it's like, why? And I was like, it's a great technique. And in training and sparring, you could, blah, blah. But I said, here, let's just do this. This will be easier. In the theater of your mind, create an opponent. Give me a scenario. Create a context. And now as you're standing there, see that guy. What does that guy have to do? What's he doing where you then put out this technique? And he's doing it, and he's like, I'm watching him do it, and I'm like, it looks like you got it right in the theater of your mind. How does that feel? He goes, yeah, it feels great. I said, okay, now skew it. Change the scenario in your mind. Change one thing. And I said, and I want you to change one thing, then do it again. And then change another thing and do it again. And one thing at a time. And I want you to change it until what you're doing becomes the dumbest fucking thing you could ever do in this world. And he's like, so he's doing it, and he's kind of this, and I'm like, I could tell that he's having trouble. I said, well, what are you picturing right now? I said, oh, this big guy is this. He keeps trying to throw a punch at me, and then I, put it like he had a knife in his hand, and now he's trying to stab me. But I still feel like it, and I was like, okay, we'll change it. And then I created this ploy in front of him. Now all of a sudden you got two guys, and one guy, you have that bad feeling, and one guy keeps saying, hey man, like, Like my phone, like, is this you? Like somebody's trying to call me, like, and they keep telling me that the guy wearing the black jacket, like, I'm supposed to give you my phone. And what? Like, yeah, like, look, you're wearing a black jacket. Look at my phone. My phone says, like, look, come here. Like, look at my phone. And yet while that's happening, there's another guy, you can tell this other guy's trying to get closer to you. And you're kind of like, as you're confused, you're not moving back. You're kind of trying to figure out what the fuck these guys are, and say, no, that's not for me, man. That's not what, as you're talking, they're close enough. And all of a sudden you have that feeling, that moment where you can tell they're about to pounce. Now pause right there. In that moment, does it make sense to do what you want to do? And he's just like, fuck no. Like it's laughable to think you're going to do that. Why? Because the context determines the content and what changed. Like if I don't know if I did it in more detail, but if I just in that scenario, what do you think changed for him? What did he feel? What changed?
The pressure.
The intent.
The pressure, the intent, it became uncontained. You see, because what he expected, every scenario that he was trying to build in his mind started from the ready position. It started from the ready position, the fighting stance, the on guard position, I don't know, there's a million fucking names for it. Everything started from, okay. And so now you're moving around. And I was like, listen, I'll send you 10 hours. 10 hours of anywhere from 30-second to 90-second homicides, murders, where one side was actively trying to kill, murder, maim the other side. And in 10 hours of all these videos, you will not once see the murderer and the intended victim get into the ready position and begin. Now, I could also send you videos of fights where guys were fighting and somebody ends up dead at the end of it. Maybe because the guy pulled out a knife eventually, started to lose the fight, pulled out a knife, stabbed somebody, pulled out a gun and shot somebody. Yes, that happens 100%. But what I'm saying is that those fights, if we rewind, before you go, oh yeah, but look, fights end up that way too, I'll show you the 10, 15, 20, 30 opportunities that they had to remove, de-escalate, or deter. I'll show you the moment where they had decisions where they could have just walked away. But their ego or sense of moral superiority, in 99% of those cases, would not allow them to do that. You get what I mean? Like, it's the context determining the content. Like, I mean, you can argue it. Like, if we just take one scene, one frame out of a fight, you can argue that it's the same. If you take one scene out of violence, like, you have to come back and we have to see the global vision as well as go in. We got to go in and dissect, come back out. And again, here we are once again, and this is why this channel exists. This is why our company exists. This is what our passion is. We are trying to have conversations about the other side. The other side of the coin that is often left face down on the table. Nobody wants to look at it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Because it becomes infinitely harder to go, well, how do I train for this? Because your training cannot just be kicking, punching, and grappling. The whole world in 1993 was like blown away because they figured out what guys like Bruce Lee and certain people knew in the 60s. That, oh my God, you got to kick, punch, clinch, and ground fight. Wow, that's a real fucking thing. You have to do all these, wow, interesting. But the world hasn't figured out yet that, like, violence is its own thing. You can't just kick and punch and ground fight. You have to study criminal blueprints. You have to study their ploys. You have to study organized predator criminals. You have to study these things. Then you have to take these blueprints and you have to put them into your training. You have to learn to witness and recognize. I just got to turn on the interview here again so I get Dustin back in. You have to put these into your training so that you can train this with each other. You can feed the blueprint and teach how you use the counter strategies, counter tactics to break those blueprints, right? That's why we call it to protect our playbook. We have counter plays, counter strategies. We have, I'm doom on you. You're thinking evil and coming up with your ploys, your ruses, Well, doom on that. I'm coming up with my own strategies, my own ruses, my own behavioral redirects. You know, this is it's massive. I had I don't want to get into it too deep with it, but I had one time where I had 3 individuals, and these individuals they weren't high level violent criminal predators. They were fucked up, super drunk, but they were wired out of their fucking minds. And these guys became a very real threat to myself and this girl that I was out with having dinner. And we were walking down the street later at night, walking back to the car. And these 3 individuals came out, and these 3 individuals very calmly in their fucked up state basically announced that they were going to kick the ever-loving fucking shit out of me, take my money, and do whatever the fuck they wanted with her. Like it was a high level threat. Now you could tell these weren't predatory criminals, but they were in a bad fucked up state, making some bad fucking decisions. And in that moment, I was in jeopardy as well as her. And what saved me was not a direct confrontation and fight. What saved me was a behavioral redirect. I had a ploy. I had a doom on you ploy or ruse where it was like, as they were getting ready to do it, I said, that's great, guys, but it's really fucked up and not fair. And like, what the fuck? I said, well, I can't use my left arm. I lost the use of my left arm in a farming accident. And they were like, what? And it was so out of left field that they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I said, yeah, look, I can't move my left arm. And I'd lift my left arm up and put it down. And they were like, what? And as they were standing there stunned, I shot. 3 eye shots. They were all staggered around swearing, we're going to kill you, but they couldn't see. And me and her took off and ran. But it didn't escalate. It was a behavioral redirect. It was a ploy. It was a ruse. But you can't, studied, trained. Why? Because we study and we train that. Because in that situation, I was outgunned, outmanned, superior force. I had no idea whether they had weapons or not. I mean, I didn't believe that they did, but I don't fucking know. I had to take them at their word. When somebody tells you they're going to beat the ever-loving fucking shit at you, take what they want and do what they want to her, I'll take you at your word for it. I have no reason to believe that you're, posturing or lying. Like, I'll just have to assume that is, in fact, what you were about to try to do. And therefore, I will deploy some countermeasures. And the biggest countermeasure in that was not the tool, it was not fighting capability. It was an organized counter blitz. And that's the part that we're trying to get out. Again, most people go, I've taken a self-defense course and have never studied the predator profile. They don't know the predator index. They don't know the 2 different types of predators. They don't understand the 5 elements that make up an organized blitz. They've never heard this stuff. And therefore, it's so effective when it's used against them because they're just so, I don't know. They have no immunity to it, right? They have no resistance to it. I don't know what other word I'm looking for, but I don't know. Anyways, okay. I don't know. Any final thoughts on this one, guys, for tonight?
No, I just think that it's important to, we've done a lot of conversations in the past just about accepting the realities when it comes to violence. And I think that where part of that falls as well is accepting the fact that it is organized. And just by that alone will change your perception on and help you further accept that the violence and the violence behavior that is out there in this world. So again, this isn't, again, a lot of it comes to acceptance and people are fucking organizing out there. So what's wrong with doing that yourself?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Dustin, anything you want to throw in?
I just think tonight's conversation ties really well into our other podcast we had about, violence as a language. Because I think this is just a deep of that. It's just learning that whole language of violence. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want to go to Japan and have to be trying to live there every day and not speak Japanese. It's no different. It's like, why would you not want to be able to speak the language?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. The techniques aren't enough. You have to understand the strategy, the tactics, and the tools and techniques. And too many other people want to just focus on that. So yeah, if people didn't listen to that podcast, go find it and listen to it, because it'll support and fit with this one really well, for sure.
100%. And I'll just end this because I get it, right? Like, listen, we're desensitized to a lot of the conversations we have, just in the sense that we have been engaged in these conversations for 27 years, 20 plus years, trying to educate people, studying this. And so you become good at what you do. You become familiar with what you surround yourself with. And this ultimately leads to increased safety, not paranoia, not having to live like, when you look into the darkest parts of human nature and you see the horrors and the brutalities that human, remember, violence is never fucking humane. Violence is never humane, but it is always human. It's such an important, Gavin de Becker's quote, right? It's such an important thing for people to understand. But when you look into that, the things that you think are going to happen because you look into that are not, that they don't happen. You don't live in a state of paranoia. You don't see evil around you you build a radar, and you become so much more at peace because you own the high ground. When you recognize the realities of something, it puts you on the high ground. And that offers you the most safety because you can see what's coming. You can see it for what it is, not worse than it is, just what it is. And it allows you to take the earliest action, which is what allows you to avoid the darkest aspects of violence because you see it coming. So it puts you on the high ground. And my last point was just that this is not hypothetical. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that I've trained over the 27 years are victims of this. This is not people going, oh, I hope this never happens. Yes, we have a lot of people that come to us because they don't ever want this to happen. But it's happened. Christmas Eve, if I asked most people watching this, listening to this, if I asked you guys, tell me about your Christmas Eve. Now, we're not going to do that, obviously, but most people have a routine. They have something special about it for a lot of people, especially if you got kids. You gather your kids, you read them towards the night before Christmas as you're sitting in bed. There's the wrapping of presents, the waiting for Santa Claus, the milk, all this great shit, right? Well, I can think right now of one of our clients who on Christmas Eve had a knock on the door, and when his wife and newborn, holding their newborn baby, maybe 3 months old, opened the door, the ex-husband came in with a ploy, using a strategy to make sure they were at home, came in, and when the new husband, our client, when he walked out of the back bedroom, he was shot 6 times. And then his wife and child were held hostage while he chased them into the back bathroom and continued to attempt to shoot him more. And luckily he was able to escape. And of course, as luck has it, the ambulance, it took almost 20 minutes. He was hit, an arterial bleed, should have died, lost more than enough, somehow, somewhere he didn't die. I'm saying it because this is a real person. This is a real family. And it's easy to sit here and talk about this, and even though it's hard to listen to a lot of this stuff or to think about and say, well, do I want to go train in this type of stuff? This does not cause your fears to come true. This is what allows you to sleep peacefully at night because you are prepared. You understand it. You are weaponized in it. And that brings you a different sense of peace. And whether you've experienced the trauma of this, and as him training was a way of him to regain his power, to take back, because he had no training prior, and then it was a way for him to reclaim that strength and that power and that confidence and to move forward in life and to overcome a situation like this. So this stuff happens. I wish this was all just hypothetical, but it's not. This is the realities, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, to help people understand that. So if you can internalize this, not just intellectualize this, but you can feel this, that just may be the motivation you need to take the actions that you need to take to make sure that you get the training that you need to keep yourself, your family safe from violent criminal assault. So that's where we'll wrap it up. All right, guys, thank you so much. I know I did a lot of the talking tonight, but I appreciate your guys' input and insights to this. It was a great conversation for us to have. I look forward to us just continuing the conversation next time we get together. I think there's a lot here, and it'd be really interesting to go deeper on this. But thank you to everybody watching this. We appreciate you guys so much. Like, share, comment. Don't forget, check us out, Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. You can follow us every Thursday night, 7:30 here live on Facebook, or you can check us out wherever you download your favorite podcast. Head over to Apple, let's say, sign, subscribe, leave us a comment, rate us. Hopefully, if you enjoyed the content, 5 stars. That way, it's going to help us reach more people, good people like you, family men, women who want to rise regardless, weaponize. And until next time, everybody, stay safe, stay weaponized, and we will chat again soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. And listen, if you found this content valuable, here's 3 different ways that I can help you weaponize for free. First, grab a free copy of my ebook, The Education of a Weaponized Man. To get your free copy today, head to ebook.awakentheprotectar.ca. Number 2, you can take a free workshop where you will discover the 10 insights violent criminals don't want you to know. To take this workshop, head to workshop.awakentheprotectar.ca. The third way is to head to my website and check out all of my freeline programs that cover everything from mindset to strategies. To check us out, go to awakentheprotectar.ca. And finally, leave a 5-star review so that we can reach more good people like you who are ready to weaponize and rise regardless.